Howdy, hi, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. Later on in the program, a one-on-one discussion with the GOP chair, the new one. He's so young, Ryan Call. But first, to my backyard. Yes, I live in Boulder. It's a special cultural exchange with the real world, and so I've been living there for a while, kind of as an ambassador from reality. And one of the best things we have are prairie dogs. Lots and lots and lots and lots of these cute little rodents running around because we love them. In fact, they have their own coalition, and this lady runs them. Lindsey Sterling Krank, you are the director of the Prairie Dog Coalition. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, Jon.
Thanks for being here. I've heard there's no actually dues-paying prairie dogs in the coalition.
Not yet, but we're working on it.
Good. Yeah, they take Visa. And a big prairie dog fan yourself, Rob O'Day from BoCo360.com. What is BoCo360.com?
We're a new internet-based local media site specializing in high-quality coverage of local stories.
Including prairie dogs.
Including in the future some great exposés on prairie dogs in the city of Boulder.
Now,
there's a lot to expose on prairie dogs.
What you do with your prairie dogs in your own time is your own business, Lindsey. So, City Council in Boulder, was it in the mid-90s, some late 90s, put in an ordinance or a new thing saying we're not going to exterminate prairie dogs. Is that right? And now we got a lot of prairie dogs in the city of Boulder because I see them everywhere. They're taking over student housing. There's like 20 of them to an apartment now. They're all over the place.
Right. Actually, that is untrue. The City of Boulder Open Space, which is the properties that we're going to be discussing today, has about 45,000 acres. Of those, about 23,000 acres are grasslands. Of those, less than 3,000 are occupied by prairie dogs. And of those 3,000 acres occupied by prairie dogs, approximately 500 are priority for prairie dogs. So we're not exactly tripping over prairie dogs, as you would say.
You said Boulder County Open Space, is that right?
The City of Boulder Open Space.
City of Boulder Open Space. What about in the city proper? Because Boulder, the city, owns twice its size in open space. So imagine 2 times of Boulder, that's the land it owns outside of Boulder. But these critters are everywhere. Has there been a growth in prairie dog population in the last decade?
In the last decade, no, there's been a decline, mostly due to sylvatic plague.
Well, they should stop smoking.
If you go back and look at Sharon Collinge's research, and most research will show that prairie dog populations expand and contract over time based on sylvatic plague and based on climate patterns. And that's what we've seen in Boulder as well.
So now that they're sucking these prairie dogs up with a vacuum cleaner and dropping them in your backyard, why are you having an issue with it? Now, where do you live, by the way?
I live in the Heatherwood neighborhood of Boulder.
That's kind of northeast?
It's a little to the east, okay. Correct, of Boulder. And we're in Boulder County, not Boulder city limits. And the issue has become there's a parcel of land that's owned by the city and maintained as open space that is outside of the city boundaries within the county boundaries. And the city, because they have an overpopulation problem with prairie dogs in an area that's adjacent to a soccer field, is now proposing to relocate those prairie dogs to an area that's immediately adjacent to a heavily populated area.
So
I mean, with human beings.
Right, and as Lindsey correctly brought up, the city has a vast amount of open space available to it and huge quantities of prairie lands.
Including next to your land.
Right, including, the 24,000 acres, and some of it happens to be very close to densely populated areas. The problem that's come up is the city has, we feel very unwisely, for both Lindsey's point of view in advocating for prairie dog wellness and ours advocating for private property owners,
you're speaking for me now.
Selected this area very close to where people live to, introduce a 500x increase in the population of local prairie dogs.
So basically, you live next to this open space, but you can't vote for city council members who might have a say in where these prairie dogs. So they can put it on their property next to you, and you have no real recourse.
That's absolutely correct.
If I could just back up and give everybody a little history. What you might not know is that you just referred to the population that is up for relocation as overpopulated. In fact, it is not. I just did a site visit yesterday to make sure I think everything looks good and in balance.
You have a little prairie dog census?
I did, yes. Yeah. And I do think it looks great. And the piece of information that we've kind of been missing, which you might find interesting, is that this particular property was deemed as a no prairie dog zone when there were no prairie dogs on it. And since then, prairie dogs migrated into this area. Then they built a soccer field.
All right, let's try. I want to pull this up
So we're in this
from
interesting situation.
From this specific one little backyard, and let's bring it to a larger issue of prairie dogs seeming to be a bit more important, I think, than people. Now, the city of Boulder, I know, is crying for money like every other municipality, and they've been talking about tax increases. Because they love tax increases, but still they have a pretty good support system for these rodents.
Sure.
So tell me, what do we spend on relocating prairie dogs, and is it wrong to have a soccer field near the prairie dogs?
Well, I think Lindsey brought up an excellent point, which gets to what the city spends annually on its wildlife management program. But that is, there was an area that was designated by the city as a no prairie dog zone. And then prairie dogs migrated to it, and now they've populated it so densely and are continuing their march that they're now threatening a soccer field. That same expansion dynamic is the one that concerns. Why am I getting a Caddyshack vibe going on right now? This is exactly what concerns people who are in, excuse me for 1 minute. This is exactly what concerns people who are now listening to city officials who they don't have a say in whether or not those people keep their jobs. They are now listening to these same officials say, what prairie dogs have done over here in expanding to threaten a soccer field is different from what we think will happen in your neighborhood, because somehow they're going to magically obey this property line where they have never demonstrated that before.
This is not the first time I remember a baseball diamond, and it was a park, and so the prairie dog advocates needed to get the prairie dogs out, but no, they kept coming back, so they wanted to build a fence, and the fence needs to be about 6 feet underground because they burrow, and the cost to do this came out to be about like $200 a prairie dog. I mean, is there a financial point where you say, this is too expensive to save a prairie dog?
I don't know that. I'm sure that's different for everybody.
What's it for you?
I don't have a dollar figure. I think every situation is different, and every relocation that I've worked on has been a different price. I mean, wildlife populations are unpredictable, weather's unpredictable. There's just so many different variables in each one. I do support wholeheartedly agencies and groups and people coming together to implement non-lethal wildlife management situations. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think Americans love wildlife, and I think we keep coming back to this problem. We have been coming back to the prairie dog conflict for so long with lethal control that we have declined the prairie dog population by 95%. And now, ta-da, my visual, all the associated species that depend on prairie dogs are also declining. So we have burrowing owls in decline, we have endangered black-footed ferrets in decline, we have ferruginous hawks in decline. So even if you personally don't have a liking for prairie dogs, we have to have them because there's 9 different species of wildlife that directly depend on them for survival.
I don't see any taxpayers in there.
Well, believe it or not, we polled Colorado voters in 2006. It was a lake research poll, and we found a strong support for prairie dog protection.
We
on
love
public
prairie
lands.
dogs. They're cute. You bastard. You want to kill cute little hobbits.
I think this is absolutely fundamental, and I think it's like, in some ways, very ironic that we're on this program where we're supposedly against one another. In fact, we're probably far closer allies on this than anybody could ever imagine. The reality is, the city has undertaken this initiative because the neighbors of that community where the prairie dogs currently live, don't want to see mitigation, don't want to see fences. So what the city is doing is they're responding to their constituents who have a vote and who are in that neighborhood. And they have proposed to take these prairie dogs and move them to somewhere where the neighbors don't have a vote. But I don't think either of us would agree that relocating those prairie dogs is in the best interest of the prairie dog. This is in the best interest of those neighbors.
What does it cost to move a prairie dog? You got to buy. You got to go to U-Haul. You've got a
small U-Haul.
Small U-Haul. What does it cost to move a prairie dog?
The city has estimated that the direct cost is going to be about $75,000.
For how many prairie dogs?
I'm sorry, $75 per prairie dog.
$75
500 to 600
per
prairie dogs, approximately 40,000. What that number doesn't include, in their own recognition of this, and they've failed to produce a number on this, is what all the indirect costs are. The division within Boulder city government that's responsible for wildlife management falls under OSMP, which has a $24 million
OSMP?
Open Space and Mountain Parks,
Okay.
has a $24 million annual budget, and the staff costs alone of wildlife management in the city of Boulder is over $600,000 annually. So you take that staff cost plus the outside experts that they've called in to research this, to do studies, to provide bids on what the relocation costs may be, to take a look at what some of the mitigation options are if they move forward with this.
But-
and the
so
direct
what
cost,
does it cost?
It's way too much.
Well, what does it cost to move a prairie dog?
Like I said, it varies, but you mentioned $75.
In this case, is that-
You mentioned $75, and I know a lot of people that would pay $75 to see a prairie live instead of die.
Well, great, they can donate, but you see, as a Boulder taxpayer, I have to, I'm compelled by law and a gun to give $75 to the government to save this rodent when I can go down to Petco and buy a hamster for $3.
Well,
You get a lot more enjoyment out of a prairie dog, and so would all the associated species that depend on them, John.
That's true.
You know what?
Shooting a prairie dog has been a long-held tradition in Colorado, and I like that.
Urban development is tough, and the prairie dog issue is tough. I won't disagree with that, but I do think that we have to take responsibility as community and to
Why not do
further-
it by donations? If so many people are with you,
You know what?
why not
Here's
do it
what
by
I do
donations?
wanna offer.
No. This is a direct question. Please give me a direct answer. Why not do it by donations? You are paid to be a full-time director for the Prairie Dog Coalition.
Mm-hmm.
If so many people think that a prairie dog is worth $75, why don't you just fundraise for it?
You know, we do fundraise for a prairie dog relocation all the time, and
Why don't you pay all the cost of rodent relocation?
they're very important keystone rodents. I am going to contribute towards the cost of mitigation for this project.
Yeah, but you make your living off of this.
Well,
I
think
I
this is an
raise my-
important-
my
this is
money.
This is an important thing to bring up, though. I'm here representing a group of homeowners in our neighborhood who have come together. In this neighborhood, we've collected over 600 petitions of people who are opposed to this relocation. These are not people by any stretch who oppose prairie dogs. This section of land already has prairie dogs on it, and it's in balance with the system. Everybody's happy with that. What people are opposed to is coming in and using the resources of the Humane Society of the United States to advocate for this.
All right. We only have less than a minute left. Let me bring it to you. Last question. What do
Most
prairie
of
dogs
my
taste like?
donors are from Boulder. You know, I have a large constituent and donor base in Boulder. I have a large constituent and donor base throughout the West. We are funded by wildlife conservation organizations, and our job is to advocate for improving prairie dog protection plans. And
Is there a price that you personally would say, this costs too much to move this prairie dog, let's let it go?
It depends on each situation. I
In
can't
this
give you a
situation,
direct answer for that.
$1,000?
In this situation, I don't know.
$2,000?
I'm not going to answer that. I
$1
don't
million?
have the answer for that. What I do want to talk about is how we can address some of your concerns. Do you want to talk about how we can address some of your concerns?
That is going to have to wait until another time. But I tell you what, if people want to get to the Prairie Dog Coalition and learn more and understand the ecological part of this, where do they go?
www.prairiedogcoalition.org.
Prairie Dog, and they can contribute.
Please do.
Please do. And boco360.com. Thank you both. Stay tuned. Ryan Call up next.
Thanks, John.